We've been working through some pretty heavy stuff, understanding scoping, understanding block scoping, and even back with the arrow functions, understanding lexical scoping with the this keyword. And while we saw a lot of benefits, there was some complexities to understand. Fortunately, now we're going to switch gears and talk about something a little less complicated, string interpolation, and other string enhancements, for example, multi-line strings. So join me in this unit where we dive into that, something that won't require so much brain power while still providing some pretty neat benefits. All right, let's talk about string interpolation. One of my favorite new features I think you'll pick up on pretty quickly and you'll really appreciate. So you should have an example under strings and then O1-interpolation. There should be a starting.html and a starting.js. You should recognize these. These are from our example of our font picker. And of course, we've switched over to the let bindings now. Now we're going to talk about building up these strings, the string for size and the string for button text to begin with. My first question to you, have you ever worked with another language where you could take advantage of string interpolation? Maybe something like Ruby or even C#? Or how about even in Bash shell scripting? There are many different languages that support string interpolation, and finally JavaScript has it. And at the end of the day, it's really about cleaning up the process of building strings. For example, this button text here. Read through this and convince yourself you know what it's doing again. There's a lot going on here. We have 3 plus signs. We add in 2 separate variables. We have a dash with some spaces around it, a pound. This type of stuff is not fun to type out, and if you're like me, you're probably testing it 3 or 4 times before you get it right. In addition to string interpolation, many languages these days have templating engines. For example, all the MVC frameworks, both client-side and server-side, that allow you to take a view, inject data into it, and then spit out the resultant string for perhaps a view on a web page, so HTML, or perhaps on the client side to generate a single-page application. These are all the same idea. At the end of the day, sometimes it's easier to create a little template that we bind data to generate strings. And that's what string interpolation is all about. So instead of this button text here, we're going to redefine this using string interpolation. So we leave our declaration the same. But instead of double quotes, we use the backtick, 2 of those. And that denotes a string that we would like to interpolate data into. These are referred to as template literals, or you might also hear them referred to as string templates, or template strings. Inside of here, we build up our string as if it were just a constant string. So for example, we have the pound sign followed by number, space, dash, space, and then size. So that's ultimately what we're doing to build up this string. And then the parts that we want to inject data into, we wrap them with a $sign and curly braces. You'll even see my editor here with WebStorm changes the color of the size variable inside of this template literal. I do the same thing with number then. And that's how we can define a template literal that will be transformed into a string, the same string we have with our button text in the line above. Let me put some space around this just so you can see this, and I'll zoom in a little. Now let's see this in action, and then let's come back and talk a little more about this. So let's come to our starting HTML page. And there are many ways you can run this from WebStorm. I'm just going to right-click here and choose Run, which will open it with my default browser. You'll see the page loads here, and you'll see that we still have our button text the same as before, so it seems like things are working. I'll split the screen here, though, and I'm going to close the project view, which you can click here to close or use a shortcut. So now if we come here and just change what's inside of our template literal, perhaps put ASDF on the front, and refresh our page, you can see that gets injected into the button text. Everything still works as before, but we now have a different process to define strings. The $sign and the curly braces denote a placeholder inside of this string template. So we have 2 placeholders in this example. And then inside of these placeholders, we define an expression. So we have inline expressions here that evaluate to a value that's then injected at that location of the string. And that's how this works. Now this is a very concise string that we're building up, so maybe the benefit doesn't quite shine through yet, but we'll see some more examples here in a moment. For now, what I'd like you to do, pause the video, and I want you to transform this console log statement down below to use the new template literal as well. So get this button text injected into the string using the same style we just did with the button text up here. Okay, so I'm going to cut out this part here, and I'm just going to come down here and perform this translation. Let's walk through this. So first off, we need to switch to a backtick, both at the start and the end of the string. And then we have this expression we'd like to inject, so let's yank that out. Let's come over and start a placeholder, $ and the curly braces, and just paste that expression in. And that's all we have to do. We can come over to the browser, open up the dev tools, and reload our page. And then when we click on one of these links, you'll see that we still have the same string showing up down in the console. So we're obviously building things up appropriately. All right, let's move on to more complex expressions with template literals.